Hey guys, today we're diving into one of the most unsettling threads on Reddit. What's the creepiest thing your kid has ever said? Now listen, kids are weird. They say all kinds of bizarre stuff. Sometimes it's adorable, sometimes it's hilarious, and sometimes it's the kind of thing that makes you want to sage your entire house, sleep with the lights on, and rethink having children altogether. These are stories from real people about the moments when their innocent little toddler looked up and casually said something like, "That man in the closet says you're going to die tomorrow." So get ready for ghost sightings, imaginary friends that probably aren't imaginary, and some good old-fashioned childhood horror. Before we jump in, where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. And if your kid has ever said anything weird, yeah, we definitely want to hear it. Alright, let's get into it. So, picture this. You're a tired dad, 34, overworked, and just trying to get your 5-year-old daughter to brush her teeth and go to bed without an epic meltdown. That night had been long, meetings had gone late, the dishwasher was broken, and he was already dreading tomorrow morning's commute. His daughter, Ellie, was the kind of kid who asked 400 questions a day. Bright, curious, sometimes exhausting. The usual bedtime routine involved 2 stories, a sippy cup of warm milk, and at least one imaginary dinosaur who needed to be tucked in beside her. That night, everything was going according to plan. Until she stopped mid, her little panda slippers skidding to a halt on the hallway rug. She pointed. "Daddy," she said. "I don't like that door." He looked up, confused. "What door?" "That one." She was pointing at the long wall of the hallway, just past the linen closet. Except, there was no door there. Not in real life. He smiled a little nervously. "There's no door there, kiddo. That's just the wall." She frowned like she didn't believe him. "No, Daddy, it wasn't there yesterday. But it's there now. The tall man came out of it last night." Now, this wasn't the first time Ellie had said something spooky. A few weeks earlier, she claimed she saw a floating lady in the kitchen window. Another time, she told her mom there was a baby crying in the walls. Chalk it up to an active imagination. Kid stuff. But something about the way she said it, flat, serious, no playfulness, gave him a chill. Still, he laughed it off. "You dreamt that, honey. Come on, time to rinse." She obeyed, reluctantly, but kept glancing back at that blank wall. Later that night, after she was tucked in and the baby monitor was on, he found himself walking back down the hallway. He paused in front of the wall. Just drywall, same beige paint. But then he noticed something odd. Right where Ellie had pointed, the wallpaper, a textured, old-fashioned floral print from the previous owners was peeled back. Just a little, maybe an inch, like someone had tugged at it. From the inside, he touched it cold. Shrugging it off, he pressed it back flat and went to bed. Probably just moisture or age, he told himself. That night, he dreamed of knocking. A slow, rhythmic knock, 3 taps, then silence. When he woke up at 3:17 a.m., the baby monitor was filled with static. Ellie's room was silent, but the hallway outside his bedroom door was not. There was a soft, shuffling sound, like someone barefoot was pacing on carpet. He opened the door. Nothing. All the lights were off. The house was quiet. He crept to Ellie's room. She was asleep, clutching her dinosaur, breathing softly. But the closet door was open, something they always kept closed because she said the lady hides in there. He shut it gently and whispered goodnight. The next morning, Ellie acted like nothing happened. Ate her cereal, watched cartoons. But as they walked down the hallway to grab her shoes, she paused again at the same spot. "Oh," she said brightly. "He's gone now." "Who?" he asked, not really wanting to know. "The tall man? He only comes when Daddy's angry." He stopped cold. He had lost his temper earlier that week. Yelled, slammed a door. Something about work stress. Ellie had cried. He'd felt awful. "Did he say something?" he asked, trying to sound casual. She shook her head. "He just watches." He didn't sleep that night. A week later, he invited his brother, a contractor, over 4 beers. Casually brought up the idea of maybe redoing the hallway. His brother knocked on the wall. "Dude, you know there's empty space behind here, right?" "What?" "Yeah. There's like a 4-foot void between this wall and the staircase. Might have been a dumb architectural decision. Want me to cut a hole and check it out?" He hesitated. "Sure," he said. They pried away part of the drywall. Dust flew. Inside was empty almost. At the very bottom, covered in a thin layer of debris and cobwebs, was a small wooden door, about 3 feet tall, painted the same color as the old house siding. No knob, just a keyhole. Neither of them spoke for a long time. They sealed it up. Drywall back on, painted over, wallpaper removed completely. Ellie never mentioned the door again, but every now and then, when he's walking to the kitchen late at night, he swears he hears soft knocking, 3 taps, then silent. Coffeewitch said my niece was 6 when she scared the living hell out of everyone at Thanksgiving dinner. It was one of those big family holidays, mismatched chairs around a folding table, half the kids eating on the floor, someone's dog stealing turkey from a plate. You get the picture. Chaos, but the good kind. Anyway, halfway through the meal, my niece, who had been coloring quietly under the table, looks up and says, super casually, Uncle Josh shouldn't sit there. The man with the melted face is already in that chair. Everyone laughed. You know, awkward adult laughter. But my sister, her mom, gave her a look. Sweetie, what man? My niece pointed directly at the empty chair next to Uncle Josh. You can't see him? She asked. He's always here. He followed us from the old house. His face is like ... droopy, like candle wax, and he smells like fire. The laughter stopped. Now, here's the thing. My sister and her husband had moved a few months ago out of this ancient rental property that had a ton of problems. Mold, bad wiring, just a total mess. But what she never told anyone, not even me, was that there had been a small fire in the attic. Electrical, contained, but enough to scorch one of the beams. She said sometimes she smelled smoke in the hallway, even after it was supposedly fixed. They never told the kids. When she asked my niece more questions, she got that spooky kid level of calm detail. Sometimes he's standing in the hallway at night, but I don't think he likes Mommy. He said she broke his house. That night, after Thanksgiving ended, my sister couldn't sleep. She said she kept checking every shadow. Around 2 a.m., she finally dozed off on the couch. She woke up to a weird smell, something acrid, like burning plastic. She checked the oven, the outlets, the heater, nothing. But in the hallway, the one that always smelled faintly of smoke in the old house, she said the scent was strong, was a burn mark. A black circle about the size of a dinner plate? No explanation. No one had been smoking. Nothing was hot. Just a perfect, scorched mark. My niece never mentioned him again after that. But when they moved a year later, she said, I think he's staying. He likes the attic. To this day, the new family who lives in their old house lists the second bedroom, the one off the attic hall, as storage only. Nobody sleeps there. Spreadsheeting also has something to say about his daughter, alright? So this one still messes with my head a little, and I'm the kind of guy who doesn't believe in ghosts, past lives, any of that stuff. I'm a spreadsheet kind of guy. I like data, I like cause and effect. But this? I don't know how to explain this. My daughter was 3 when she said the thing. She was going through that phase where she wanted baths constantly, like 3 a day. She loved water, always splashing, pouring cups over her head, pretending to be a fish. One evening, we're doing our usual bath time. I'm sitting on the floor beside the tub, scrolling my phone. She's just playing with her little plastic sea animals, narrating some drama between the octopus and a rubber duck. And then out of nowhere, she goes completely still. She's holding this little blue cup, her hair soaked and dripping, and she stares into the water and says, "This is where I died last time." I glance up. "What? Honey?" She looks at me and goes, "Before I was in this body, I drowned. There was a big ship and too many people, and I was cold. My shoes floated away, and then it was dark for a long time. I swear to God, I didn't move. I couldn't. It was like someone poured ice water down my back." I say, "Where was this?" She shrugs. "A long time ago, but I don't like the big boats now. I don't want to do that again." Then she picks up the duck and goes back to playing like nothing happened. I told my wife later and she got this weird look. She said she had a dream, when she was pregnant, of standing on the deck of some old boat in a storm, holding a child she didn't recognize. She'd chalked it up to hormones. Fast forward 2 years. We take a family vacation to a maritime museum. You know, old ship replicas, nautical stuff, the usual field trip vibes. We're walking through this part modeled after an early 20th century passenger liner. She freezes in the hallway and says, "It smells like the wet room." We're like, "What wet room?" She points at this big sign. "Third class quarters." She refuses to walk any farther, says it's too loud, even though it's dead silent. She's pale. She won't let go of my hand. It takes a full hour to calm her down. Later that night, I start digging through shipwreck history dates, passenger records, lifeboats, shoes. You don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Trust me. She never talked about it again. But she won't go near the deep end of a pool. Won't get on a ferry. She says, "I don't want to fall in the dark water again." I try not to think about it. But sometimes, when she's asleep and I hear the bath faucet drip, I just remember that look on her face, like she knew exactly what she was talking about, and like I wasn't supposed to ask any more questions. Waffled and Tiss said my son had this imaginary friend when he was 4. Totally normal, right? Little kids have wild imaginations. He called him Mr. Cabbage. Thought it was hilarious. He'd say stuff like, "Mr. Cabbage says, no broccoli today," or "Mr. Cabbage doesn't like bedtime." That kind of mischief. We laughed it off until things got unsettling. One night we're doing the bedtime routine, bath, teeth, story, snuggle, and he gets really serious. While I'm tucking him in, he says, "Mr. Cabbage says, you shouldn't close the closet. That's where he goes to sleep." I pause, sort of smirking. Okay, but it's dark in there. He nods solemnly. He likes the dark. He said he's been here longer than the house. That phrasing stuck in my head. Longer than the house. Where does a 4-year-old get that? So I ask, "What does Mr. Cabbage look like?" He says, he doesn't have a face. Just buttons and a coat and very long fingers. He smells like the basement. I'm laughing, but not really. My wife comes in, asks what we're talking about. He repeats it all, calm as anything. Later, when he's asleep, I'm joking around about it, but she gets a weird expression. She says her grandmother used to tell stories about a man in the button coat that lived in her closet as a child. Thought it was just some boogeyman thing. The next night, our son refuses to sleep in his room. Says Mr. Cabbage is mad. He says he didn't like the closet door shut. He scratched the wall. Sure enough, next morning, there are 3 weird lines on the inside of the closet door. Not deep, not dramatic. But I know they weren't there when I painted that room. We try not to feed into it. You know how they say not to encourage imaginary friends once they get creepy? But one night, our baby monitor picks up something. Not crying, not footsteps. Just this creaking, like slow shifting weight, and then a whisper. One word. Not in our son's voice. Cabot. We switched bedrooms the next day. Called in a priest, even though we're not religious. Haven't heard anything since. Our son doesn't remember Mr. Cabot anymore. But when he draws pictures of our old house, there's always a man standing in the closet, with no face. This happened when my daughter was 2.5. Barely talking in full sentences, but definitely old enough to recognize people. I came home from work one day, long day, awful traffic, the usual, and she's standing at the top of the stairs when I walk in. She just stares at me. Not excited, not happy, just blank. I go, "Hey baby," and she frowns. Not in a mad way, in a confused way. She points at me and says, "You're not the right mommy." I blink. "What?" She says it again. "You're not my real mommy." My real mommy got sad and went in the water. My husband's behind her, carrying a laundry basket, and he looks at me like, "What the hell?" I crouch down and ask her what she means, and she just shrugs and walks off like it's nothing. But the word stuck. The right mommy went in the water. So later that night, I'm rocking her before bed and I ask again. "Real gentle," she says. My first mommy had a green dress. She cried all the time. Then she put rocks in her pockets and walked into the big lake. Now I'm panicking internally, because that's not just some toddler nonsense. That's specific. So I ask her who told her that. She looks at me and goes, "I remember. It was me." Next day I call my own mom, ask if she ever said anything weird to her. She tells me that a few weeks earlier, my daughter had asked her, "What happens if you jump in the deep part of the lake and don't come up?" Now, we don't live near a lake. We don't even swim that often. And that imagery, the rocks in the pocket thing, that's like straight out of a Virginia Woolf novel. Except no one in this house reads Virginia Woolf. Couple nights later, she wakes up screaming, says, "Don't make me go back in the water. I don't want to be that mommy again." We took her to a child psychologist. Totally normal evaluation. Sweet, smart, just imaginative. No trauma, no signs of anything dark. She doesn't say things like that anymore. She's 5 now. Talks about cartoons and bugs and why grapes are sticky. But sometimes, when she's sleeping, she says things. Mumbles. One night, I leaned close and heard her whisper, "Thank you for being the nice one." It's probably nothing. That's what I tell myself. But I haven't worn a green dress since. When my son was about 3, he went through a phase where he'd talk to the walls, like actually walk up to them and have these little murmured conversations. We assumed it was some kind of imagination thing. Maybe leftover Bluey episodes or whatever was in his brain. He was our first kid. We weren't worried. Until one day, I'm sitting in the hallway folding laundry and I hear him whispering again. He's facing the wall by the linen closet, tapping it lightly with his hand. I say, "Hey bud, what are you doing?" And he looks over his shoulder and says, "I'm talking to my brother. He lives in here." I laugh. "Oh yeah, what's your brother's name?" He turns back, presses his ear to the drywall, and says, he doesn't have a name anymore. He said Mommy forgot it. My skin goes cold. My heart actually skips. "What do you mean I forgot?" He looks straight at me and says, "Not you, Mommy, my other Mommy. She'll put him in here so he wouldn't cry anymore." That was the moment. I stood up and said, "Okay, no more games." I made some excuse to redirect him, but that stuck in my brain like a thorn. I told my husband about it later, and we both agreed. Creepy, but probably some weird dream logic, or something he picked up from a show. He didn't watch anything remotely violent. But hey kids, mix things up. A few days later, we're at my parents' house, and my mom brings out this old family photo album. My son points at a picture of me as a teen and says, "That's you when you were the sad mommy." I laugh it off and say, "I wasn't sad." But he goes, "Yes, you were. You had to bury your baby." My mom just stares at me, confused. I've never lost a child. I've never had a miscarriage that he could have overheard talk about. Nothing. So I ask him later, "Do you remember your brother?" He nods. He cries a lot. He says his arms are heavy. I say, "What do you mean heavy?" He shrugs, like he can't move them, but he wants to play. The next week, I hear tapping on the wall. Not from my son. All of us. Just soft tapping. Thump, thump, thump. From the linen closet wall. I open the door. Nothing. I even got a flashlight and checked the vents, the crawl space entry. Everything. Empty. After that, we started sleeping with music on at night. A white noise machine. Something to drown out sounds. But a few weeks later, I wake up to my son crying in bed. He's curled up, sobbing. I ask what's wrong, and he says, he doesn't like it when you lock the closet. It's too dark, I said. "Who?" And he says, "My brother." He says he's sorry. I didn't sleep at all that night. A couple months later, it stopped. He just forgot or outgrew it. Never mentioned his brother again. But that patch of wall in the hallway, it always feels cold, no matter the weather. And sometimes, when I walk past it in the dark, I swear I hear someone breathing. Dinachuro said when my daughter was 4, she refused to go near the stairwell in our old house. Wouldn't even walk past it. She'd edge along the opposite wall like it was lava or something. At first I thought she just didn't like stairs. But one night, after her bath, I was carrying her past the landing and she screamed. Like full body, she clung to my neck and cried into my shirt. When I finally calmed her down, she whispered, "The burned lady is under the stairs." Now, this was a split-level home. No basement, no crawl space, just a closed-off wedge under the bottom stair. You could open the door, toss in a vacuum, a mop bucket, that kind of space, I said. "There's nobody under the stairs, honey." She shook her head. "She's not alive. She'll watch us." Okay, that's the kind of sentence that makes you question every decision you've ever made. But I tried to keep cool. I said, "What does she look like?" "She's black on the outside," my daughter whispered. "Like wood from the fire. Her skin doesn't move right." I swear I got goosebumps on my teeth. That night, I couldn't sleep. I got up around 2 a.m., and against my better judgment, opened that little stairwell closet. Nothing inside, smelled like pine sol and dust. I even knocked on the floorboards hollow. Then I shut the door and turned to go upstairs. And I swear I heard a quiet little tap, just one. Next morning, I asked my husband if he'd ever heard anything weird in that part of the house. He looked at me sideways and said, "You mean the storage crawl by the stairs?" "Yeah, I hate that thing. I always feel like someone's standing in it when I open the door." We never told each other that. A week later, our daughter drew a picture with her crayons. Stick figures, a house, a sun, and this black, crackly shape under the stairs. She wrote her beside it. We started keeping that closet locked after that. Then, about 2 months later, we had to have some plumbing work done. One of the guys working the job came up from the crawl space and asked, "You know your subfloor's been scorched under the stairs?" I blinked. "Yeah," he said. "Like there was a fire. Long time ago. It's all black and brittle." We didn't know what to say. There was no record of a fire in the house disclosure. Nothing like that in the inspection. That night, our daughter stood at the top of the stairs and said, "She's not mad anymore. She just wanted us to know." After that, silence. My daughter stopped avoiding the stairwell. She played near it, sat on the bottom step to put her shoes on, drew happy suns again. Whatever it was, maybe it just wanted to be seen. But I still don't keep anything in that closet. Feels wrong somehow, like it's already occupied. When my son was 3, he became obsessed with this one guest room in our house. We used it for storage, mostly old baby gear, winter coats, the kind of stuff you tell yourself you'll donate but never do. Every time we walked down the hall, he'd stop in front of the door, put his little hand on the knob, and whisper, "He's still in there." I'd ask who he was, and my son would say the same thing every time. The man with no face? Creepy, sure, but toddlers are dramatic. I figured it was a phase, a mashup of cartoons and his wild little imagination. But then he started drawing him, crayon sketches, always the same. A tall figure with a circle head and no features. Just empty, blank. Sometimes he'd draw a regular person next to him, usually me or my husband, with little speech bubbles that said things like, "Give it back," or "That's mine." One night, after we'd read books and done the bedtime routine, I was tucking him in and he said, "Monty, he says you took it," but I told him it wasn't your fault. I stopped tucking. "Took what?" "My face," he whispered. Now, I am not the kind of parent who jumps straight to paranormal explanations, but I'll admit, that one stuck with me. I went back to that storage room after he fell asleep. Just stood there, staring at the piles of boxers, wondering what it was about this room that he fixated on. I moved some stuff around, found an old mirror I'd forgotten we even owned, wrapped in a thick green blanket. It was cracked at the corner, just a jagged line, but enough to notice your reflection stutter. I didn't think much of it. Put it in the garage to toss later. The next morning, my son came into the kitchen and said, "He's quieter now." I said, "Who?" He looked at me like I was dumb. "The man with no face." He put his window away. I swear I got chills so strong I almost dropped my coffee. Weeks went by. No more drawings. No more comments. I thought it had passed. But then one night, I caught him sleepwalking for the first time. He was standing in front of the door to the guest room, hand on the knob, whispering something over and over. I leaned in. He was saying, "He wants it back. He wants it back." We moved out 3 months later. Not because of that. We were planning to anyway. But I didn't exactly miss that house, or that room. 2 weeks after the move, my son asked me, "Did he come with us?" I asked who. He just smiled. We still have the drawings. I keep them in a file folder in the basement. Every once in a while I pull them out and wonder if I should have burned that mirror instead. Or maybe it wasn't the mirror at all. All I know is, ever since we moved, we don't have any full-length mirrors in the house, just to be safe. Velvet Lang said when my daughter was 5, she started referring to someone named Leela. At first I thought it was just an imaginary friend. No big deal. Lots of kids make them up. I'd even ask about Lila sometimes, just to hear what kind of pretend adventures they were having. But Lila never changed. Same name, same appearance. A little girl in a blue dress with yellow buttons, long dark hair, and no shoes. One night, as I was putting her to bed, she whispered, "Don't turn the light off yet." Lila's mad again. I asked, "Why is Lila mad?" "She doesn't like you." That's not exactly what you want to hear from your sleepy kid. From there, things escalated. She'd wake up crying in the middle of the night. Said Lila stood by her door. Said she sometimes came up close to her face, breathing, not talking, just breathing. We started leaving a nightlight on. It helped for a while. But then came the drawings. She brought one home from school. Blue dress, yellow buttons, black scribbles for eyes, long hair. She said it was Lila. The teacher asked us very politely if we'd maybe exposed her to scary movies or ghost stories. We hadn't. One night, we were watching TV in the living room when she wandered in, sleepwalking. She stood there for a moment, then pointed toward the hallway and said, "Lila's in your room now." We checked. Nothing. That same week, my husband found her talking in the closet. He asked what she was doing, and she said, "Lila wants to wear my skin." That was the moment we called in help. We didn't know what kind: therapist, priest, medium. We just needed someone. We started with a child psychologist. He said kids often externalize fear by inventing entities. Nothing to worry about. But then came the tape. You see, we had a baby monitor in her room, audio only. One night, my husband fell asleep on the couch, and I went to bed early. Around 2 a.m., I heard voices. Two, soft, talking over each other. I checked the monitor. One voice was clearly my daughter. The other, not. It was deeper, throatier, almost like a whisper, but with weight. I got out of bed, ran down the hallway. She was sitting up in bed, eyes wide open, facing the corner. I asked who she was talking to. She said, "Lila wanted to know what your bones taste like." After that, we let her sleep in our room for weeks. Eventually, the Lila phase passed. No more drawings, no more comments, no more middle-of-the-night whispers. Until last year, we were packing up the garage for a move, and my now 12-year-old daughter found an old doll I didn't even recognize. It was filthy, with tangled black hair and a faded blue dress. 3 yellow buttons. She held it, stared at it for a long time, then said, "Oh, there you are." I asked what she meant. She shrugged and said, "Lila was really mad when I stopped talking to her, but she's been quiet for a while." We didn't bring the doll to the new house. My husband burned it in the fire pit behind our old place the night before we moved, just in case. Ikufim shares his experience. This happened when my son was 3. We were sitting at the kitchen table eating spaghetti, and he stopped mid-chew, stared at me with that blank kid expression, and said, "I remember when you died." I laughed awkwardly. "What do you mean?" He just blinked slowly and said, "You were old. Really old. You died in your chair, but then you came back different, and I had to find you again." I didn't really know what to say to that. I asked him if he meant in a dream. "No," he said matter-of-factly. "Last time, before you were my mommy, you were somebody else. I had to wait a long time before you came back." That's when I started wondering if maybe this was a past life thing. I'm not spiritual, I don't really believe in that stuff. But he went on like it was the most normal thing in the world. "You liked tea?" he continued. "You lived in a blue house with white steps. You had birds. I used to feed them while you painted. We live in an apartment. I've never painted in my life." "Where was the house?" I asked. He thought hard. "It was where the sun takes a long time to go down, near the water. The boats were allowed." I pressed him for more. He said my name was Marin, that I wore a long blue dress every day, that I cracked when I walked, because I was old, that I fell asleep and didn't wake up one day. Then he looked and looked for me. But I was gone until now. Again, I laughed it off. But that night, after he went to bed, I googled the name Marin plus painter plus house near water. Just curiosity. Marin Colby, died 1987, lived in Port Townsend, local painter. White house with blue shutters, birds. Her husband died before her, no children. Could have been coincidence, but it was weird. I didn't tell my son about it. A few weeks later, he brought me a rock. Just a small gray one. Smooth, like a river stone. Said he found it in the parking lot. He said, "This was yours. You kept it by the window. You said it was lucky." I asked how he remembered that. I just do. Later that year, he stopped talking about it. Never brought up Marin again. If I tried to ask, he'd just say I don't remember. He's 11 now. I've told him the story once or twice, and he just thinks it's funny. Says, maybe I made it up. But last summer, we visited a friend who lives near a lake. My son froze on the dock and said, "It smells like her house." I asked, "Who?" He shrugged. "The old lady who used to be you." So yeah, either I have the most imaginative child on the planet, or I came back from the dead and my kid remembers. Either way, I keep that rock by the window. And that's it for today's stories. If you enjoyed these, do us a favor, hit that like button, subscribe, and click the bell so you never miss a video. And don't forget, drop a comment below, telling us where you're watching from and which story hits you the hardest. Or share your own. We might feature it in the next one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.